Hello and welcome to Betfair's season previews. Now we're going to talk about the Gold Coast Suns, a team that I find very, very interesting, and I quite like the Gold Coast Suns. But Daz, how do you reckon they're going to go in 2023?
Yeah, it's interesting. It was only the second time they've won 10 games in a season last year. The last was back when Gary Ablett was playing and Guy McKenna was coach, and they did that without Ben King. When they lost him at the start of the year, a lot of people thought it would be a disaster, but Marvior Chol and Levi Casbolt kicking plenty of goals for them. But the challenge for them now is they lose Isaac Rankin, one of their early draft picks. He goes back home to South Australia to play for the Crows. Jack Bowes, obviously interesting list management decision around that, with a sort of the salary cap dump where he ends up at Geelong. And in terms of play, I mean, Josh Corbett showed some signs. He's gone as well to Fremantle, but they get Ben Long from the Saints, who played close to every game last year. Tom Berry comes across from Brisbane, and some good draft picks. Bailey Humphrey is a nice early selection, and they get Jed Anderson from the Kangaroos as a pre-season supplemental signing, which would be good for them. But I'd expect that they'd set the benchmark at that 10 wins again.
And I think Jed Anderson really fills a hole in the Gold Coast list that needs to be met, and that's uncontested possessions. But we'll get to that in a second. Look, in terms of a breakout year, I'm super keen on Ben Long. Look, whether or not he has a breakout year will remain to be seen, but I think he's a really exciting player, and probably a player that every single year he goes by in the AFL, that extra maturity is invaluable for him. He's 25 now, 79 games of experience. He finished the year at St Kilda, and I know you watched him closely, with the best game of his career according to Champion Data. I think he plays his best football on the halfback flank. He's got great skills. In that last game, he recorded 27 touches, and that had 17 kicks. So a really, really strong game for Ben Long. Gold Coast have clearly identified that they need a little bit of run and carry off halfback. But I think the main thing for Gold Coast is they need a bit of toughness. And we know that Ben Long brings that toughness. He's had some issues in the tribunal before. If he can control that toughness a little bit, yeah, I think Ben Long is going to be a terrific pickup for the Gold Coast Suns.
Yeah, he was one of very few Saints who didn't fall away in the second half of last year, but he, for whatever reason, he couldn't settle into a spot. As you say, he'd play back, he'd play forward, he'd tag, he'd be an injury sub. And I think he was slightly out of favour with the St Kilda coaching staff, which then obviously changed in the off-season, but he'd already left by that point. So we always talk about the Gold Coast losing those types of players, so it's really good that they get one that comes back the other way.
The next one we're going to talk about is a best and fairest Smoky, and he's almost the forgotten man. That's Matt Rowell. He obviously came into the AFL absolutely on fire. I think he was almost leading the Brownlow after his first 3 games. Got injured and has found it hard to come back. Surely fitness has been a massive contributor to that. But you look at his last season, he played 56% of his career games in his last season. So it's clearly been injury interrupted. He still ranks elite for all the key metrics in terms of contested possession, clearances. The issue for me for Matt Rowell has been his fitness, and that key identifier for me is the fact that he can't mark around the ground, which means he can't keep up. So once he clears the ball, he finds it he struggles to spread out of a contest and get that mark. Look, he, by all reports, has had an amazing pre-season. We know that he could potentially be a Brownlow type of player if he's fit. When he was fit, I'm looking for him to have a massive year, and I think his pre-season will only allude to that.
Yeah, his last practice match against the Giants, he had 24 possessions, 14 contested, and laid 9 tackles, which, as you point out, he's been elite in that space, multiple clearances. Yeah, he was probably best on ground in his first 3 games, and he did a shoulder, I think, against Geelong, and just hasn't been the same ever since that time. So I think that's a really good shout, that he'll be really important in that midfield group for the Gold Coast, alongside his mate Noah Anderson, who he was drafted with at the time.
Well, you just look at some of their players. They've got Tuke Miller, Noah Anderson, Ben King, who hopefully is going to return this year. Marvior Chol kicked 40-plus goal last year, and he was outstanding. And then you saw that Levi Casbolt could be that role player. Ben Long comes in, adds a bit of class, hopefully, to that back line. Look, by all accounts, I think Gold Coast should be improving this year. Do I have a Betfair Exchange betting strategy? No, not just yet. I think I'd like to watch the Gold Coast Suns. Tuke Miller obviously could be a Brownlow chance, but I'm going to have to wait and see how he goes early in the year, and potentially we could do some trading there. But is there anything that fancies you from a Gold Coast Suns perspective for betting?
As you were reading that out, I mean, normally you'd go someone like Ben King for the Coleman, but it's probably unlikely coming straight back from injury. So yeah, Tuke Miller had a very good year in the Brownlow. He's an elite talent. I always hate it when people say this expression, but I think it's true with him that if he played for Collingwood or Richmond, he'd be recognised for being absolutely elite. He's a star, so yeah, he's a chance. You'd be watching his markets throughout the year for sure.
Yeah, well, they definitely go missing outside of Victoria sometimes, and it provides really good betting opportunities for punters, especially on the Betfair exchange. Well, that's all we got time for the Gold Coast Suns. Look forward to them having a big year. For more AFL season previews, head to the Betfair Hub.
Gamble responsibly. Call 1-800-858-858.